Ifatu Melifonwu. This is going to be over. Lions are going to win it. Lions are bringing the NFC North title back to Detroit.
All right. Well, hey, good evening. Good Friday evening. Hey, look at that, man. I got something all over my face. Let's get that off the face. Here we go. Sorry, messing a little bit of the avatars here, trying to get things figured out in this new computer. We're almost there. All right. Welcome to Friday Night Off the Cuff. It is Rockdown Detroit Lions in the house. I'm your host tonight. As always, Will Rock. Welcome to Rockdown Podcast Network. How's everybody doing tonight? First and foremost, hope you guys are enjoying the Friday night weather. A little bit of rain today, but it cooled off a little bit. Feels good outside. I'll tell you what, spring, man, has just got me in a different energy mood. I am ready. I'm ready for some more spring football this Sunday, and I am ready for some good summertime weather here in Michigan. There was a couple of questions in the chat that I'll get to here in just a moment, but let's do some housekeeping first. Let's make sure that everybody knows about sportspider.com. If you guys have not been to sportspider.com, please check it out. It is probably one of the best websites I have seen out there for sports, and that's sportspyder.com. Get all of your sports in one place. Check it out. I promise you guys, you will love it. You can whittle it down and make your own little newsworthy site, if you will, out of it. So let me know right away. How's the volume tonight? How's the video? The new computer's running. So haven't had any issues yet today, but it's been a little bit hot on the mic, a little distorted. And I just want to make sure that it's not coming across that way to you guys. And we're running off two computers tonight, so I might be a little bit slower than usual. So anyway, what's happening tonight? What you guys up to today? What's new? Not a whole lot for the Lions. I can tell you that. Not a whole lot going on this week. A lot of rumors, apparently. So let's get to that. Let's get to that first question that I saw in there by Adam. First one that was brought up by Mike, I believe, wasn't it? No, Pat Beach says, what makes you think Taylor Decker is not going to be around? I don't know where that's coming from. Now, about a week ago, I think we spoke about the possibility that other, people that we're talking about, the possibility that Taylor Decker would have to get moved off of, traded, something to make these extensions happen for Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and others. I don't believe that's the case. He's in the last year of his deal. That makes absolutely no sense. The Lions would save about half of what they have to pay him this year, which would be about $9.8 million-ish. But we know one thing is for sure. Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell have both said time and time again, the offensive line was their number one offseason priority, to keep that thing together as much as possible. And with that being said, nothing's going to change here. They're trying to keep guys, not let guys walk out the door. If they moved off of Taylor Decker, I would be extremely surprised. Like I said, last year of his deal, I wouldn't even be surprised if they extended him, worked out another year or two with him to help save money that way, front load it. Don't put a lot of guaranteed money into the deal. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Haven't heard anything. Nothing coming out of Allen Park that I know of. Haven't seen anything from any of the insiders about it. So it's a pretty mute point on that front with me. When do I think that their final boards are done? Look, they're never done. These boards are ever changing. The Detroit Lions, I guarantee you, are working on the boards up until they draft. It's a constant movement. They're constantly on the phone, talking to other teams, trying to feel other teams out. And even during the draft, they're constantly moving because this player, jumped ahead, got taken way early. This player, slipping a little bit. So they're shuffling things around constantly. Guarantee it. I believe that it's a constant work in progress. You just never know until you know who you're going to take. I'm sure they have defined, their top 10, if you will. I'm sure they have, if they have a top 10 or a top 5, the players that they would love to make it out of this draft with. I'm sure they have that assembled. But you still have a couple of weeks ahead of the draft here. They're still working on things. They're still trying to feel guys out, and most importantly, feel these teams out. Matter of fact, there was some news this morning. So I was listening to some stuff on the Vikings, and they're trying to play coy a little bit with what they're going to do. It's been speculated that they're going to jump up as far as they can to grab a quarterback. But the Vikings, man, they're not playing around, and nor is anybody else in the NFC North. They know that the Detroit Lions are for real now, and it's time that they have to do something to execute their game plan to try to beat us this year and in the coming years. So the Vikings potentially moving up the board and grabbing a quarterback, to be honest with you, I think it would be foolish. You have 2 first-round picks. You're going to get 2 amazing players with those picks. You may not get the quarterback that you want. Maybe they're really high on somebody like J.J. McCarthy or Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is working out in Minnesota this week, or he already has. And look, if that's who they're targeting, they've got to get up to number 2. And if that's the case, that means Washington's got to move. And if Washington moves, man, that really upsets everything. But I'll tell you what, if I was Washington, knowing how many pieces I needed, and I should probably try to get Adam back on to talk about it, why wouldn't you take that deal? Why wouldn't you take 2 first-round picks, still end up with a quarterback and an extra player, first-round talent? You're rebuilding your team a lot quicker, and then go out and get another quarterback next year. Get 2 young rookies to develop, your team with. But anyway, I digress. There's just a lot of action, I guess, is where I was going with that. It's consistent, and constant. So it's forever, ever moving. The other question Adam had asked is, do I feel that teams picking late don't bother doing their due diligence on players projected to be out of their range? That's a great question. I couldn't tell you that I have a definitive answer what they do and what they don't do, but we just saw it with Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold is projected top 15 by every account, every analyst. At least over the last few weeks, he was the top 1 or 2 corners in this draft. And unless 8 offensive linemen decide to fly off the board in the top 20, I expect Arnold to be off the board by no later than 17. So it begs the question, why did the Lions, take a top 30 with Arnold? Are they hearing things? Do they know something that we don't? Do they know that maybe there's a potential that Terrion Arnold might slip? And if that's the case, well, then it makes sense. Or is it the other way? Are the Lions going to move up? And that's, what I was speaking to the other day, is that the Lions are potentially going to move up for Terrion Arnold. There could be the framework already in place for a deal to be done on draft day, depending on what else happens, in the early parts of that day. Maybe the Lions have an opportunity to move up, or if things go a different direction, maybe that deal is off the table. I will tell you this, though, I would be extremely surprised if Brad Holmes hasn't reached out to, the top 15 teams, excluding probably the Bears. I don't think the Bears are as desperate as what some other people are making them out to be. I don't think that they're that desperate to trade with the Lions or anybody else. It wouldn't help them. It would only hurt them to trade with the Lions. And they don't need to move. They're perfectly in a great position to pick where they are. And they're going to be able to grab whoever they want with those 2 picks. So yeah, to see the Lions bring in a player that is potentially already off the board just tells you they're considering moving up, because that's the only way it's going to happen. If Terrion Arnold fell to 29, that would probably be the biggest shocker in a draft. Gosh, probably 10 plus years. I mean, I couldn't even remember the last time somebody fell that hard that was projected, that high up. Could Aaron Rodgers be the one? I mean, he fell incredibly in his draft. He fell for a while. I have to say there had to be somebody in between that time. Latu, I'm not big on Latu, the neck injury, not big on it. I think that it would be unwise to grab a player that has a neck injury to go along with grabbing Levi Onwuzurike that had a back injury and how that's all turned out. Pascal, I guess, had lower back injury too in college, and look how that's turned out. So I wouldn't. It would be unwise, in my opinion. But Brad Holmes does what Brad Holmes does. So whatever he does, we're gonna have to live with it. Will Levis was projected top 5. There you go. So where did he end up going? He went in the first round, right? Can't remember now. Where did he go? When did he get picked? I can't remember. Was it early? Early second round? Is that what you're saying? Early second? Yeah, it's a pretty big drop. Yeah, but the guy's afraid of milk, man. I would have made him drop too. How can he be afraid of milk? There's one thing to not drink milk because you're lactose intolerant, right? Or maybe you just don't like the taste, but to be afraid of it, that's kind of odd. But I guess to each his own. People are afraid of mice. I'm not, but all right. So here we go. Let's welcome everybody into the chat. We got Pat Beach started us off today. Tracy's moderating. We got Uperlights, Eric Rentamaki. Matter of fact, let's add Eric real quick. I don't know why I haven't done this before. We got Mike P in the house. We got Jaster, Adam, Lone Wolf, Decker Pecker, Adam again, Bruce Morton. Who else is in here? Hatter's House, 7110. West Coast, right? Hatter's House. You're out in LA, I thought. Got the News Drifter, Shadow Viper 619. Who else is in here? Randy P. Salty Pork Chops. We got a light crew tonight, but you know what? We always have a loyal crew. What's up, Jaster? How's it going, man? Appreciate you guys joining Insight. Jaster's moderating tonight, too. We got I Remember Tobin Wrote in the house with the lion emoji. All right. So I have a few things to talk about tonight. We'll open up the phone lines. We'll see, who wants to call in tonight, because that's what tonight's really about. It's all about Lions fans and calling in and discussing things that's on your mind. The show is directed, for you. It's about you. It's about us. It's about the fans. And if you haven't noticed, and I got to put this out there, so the banner for the YouTube has been changed. It says Rocked On Detroit Lions Podcast now. Obviously, it's a Rocked On Podcast Network branded podcast. The name will end up changing. I'm just slowly changing it. So the vision was Rocked On Podcast Network was going to host all 32 NFL teams under one channel. And then, of course, the more you get into it and the more you understand YouTube, that could have been a bad idea. So this channel has gone heavy Detroit Lions, which is obviously my team. And I wouldn't do any other content for other teams. So it's going to be hosted on separate channels. And migrating now, I don't want people to not be able to find the channel, but being a Detroit Lions channel will help them in the future. So that's why we're making the change. It's still the same thing, still the same podcast, still the same name, still the same company, just different branding effort to help the channel grow and be found, with the YouTube analytics, SEO, keywords, all that stuff that is needed in today's world. Everything is so keyword centric. So one of my top articles for tonight that I found that I wanted to talk about really set me back for a minute. Like, I'm beginning to question this individual because of what he wrote. I have never seen, I don't think anyone else has wrote anything even close to this, but I'll let you guys decide for yourself on what you think about it. But Lions Wire, Jeff Risdon put out this article, I believe today. Yeah, just a few hours ago. No, it was a few days ago. And he's talking about reorganizing the Lions' needs. And who do the Lions need at this point before the draft? A couple weeks before the draft. And I'm going to bring it in because, I mean, if the Lions did this, I think the entire city would melt down, to be honest with you. All right, so here we go. He feels that before we get to his number one position there, which I kind of already given away, he feels that with the 2024 NFL draft quickly approaching, it's a good time to reassess the biggest team needs for the Detroit Lions organization. Even with no immediate needs for any starters, there are still considerable holes in the roster for general manager Brad Holmes and his crew to address in the draft and perhaps free agency thereafter. So that's funny, Jaster. All right. So free agency and big trade have changed the rankings of Detroit's team needs. More changes were averted when the Lions opted to keep Brock Wright and bring back Nate Sudfeld. Moves that bolstered the depth chart at tight end and quarterback. Look, it did not bolster the quarterback room. I don't think that Nate is going to have any chance at making this roster. I really don't. Brock Wright, obviously, is a different story. He's been Mr. Consistent as a blocker. That's what he's going to continue to be. But to say that our number one overall need is safety, that just kind of blew my mind a little bit. I get it. I mean, you guys have heard me talking about it. We need another corner. Yes, we need another safety. But to say that this is our number one need on this team does not make any sense to me at all. And he's obviously entitled to his opinion. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I do believe that we need a safety. If I'm going to interpret this, does this mean that we're taking a safety with our first pick? Is that what he's trying to say? Or is he just reorganizing the thought process of what is the biggest need versus the least need? And as we get down his list, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So let's see what he says about safety. He says the Lions have starters returning in Kirby Joseph and Ifeatu Melifonwu. Both are young and have shown promise, but also have not proven themselves beyond a reasonable doubt. See, I don't agree with that. I think that Kirby's got a ways to go, but Ifeatu Melifonwu quickly, made a big change last year. He finally got some snaps that, meant a lot, and he did a lot with it. I think Ifeatu Melifonwu took a huge jump last year after battling injury for the majority of his career and not really being able to do anything on the field. He made some big jumps last year, and in what was a pretty pathetic, defensive back room, outside of a couple of key players like Brian Branch, I think he did just fine. I would love to see Ifeatu Melifonwu stick around for a few more seasons. But anyway, he says that, the only depth in 2023 is Brandon Joseph, who spent his rookie season on the practice squad. Obviously, I can't ignore, the fact there that we are pretty thin. And then he goes on to say that Brian Branch is a wild card. Right now, he is Detroit's starting slot cornerback, but he does have some experience at both safety spots from his college days at Alabama. Sound familiar, guys? Who's been saying that? Who's been telling you that good old Brian Branch might slide back to safety this year? I'm glad that Jeff and I see eye to eye on this. At a minimum, the Lions must add at least one game-ready player to the depth chart. A draft pick, and a veteran with some experience, each being added is preferred. That I agree with too. I just don't think that would be a number one overall need. But I do believe that the Lions should add a safety in this draft. Sion Vaki, if they want to take one early, is probably the guy that I love the most. And look, there's some amazing safeties still sitting there in free agency land. So if the Lions really want to upgrade this team, they can. That just means that if Ifeatu Melifonwu or Kirby Joseph, one of those two is going to lose their starting position. And I'm okay with that as long as we're elevating. I don't think it would be Ifeatu. I think it would be Kirby that would end up getting sat down or taking a second fiddle role, but there's nothing wrong with that either. let him grow, let him have another season to work out the kinks and, see what happens. So Salty Pork Chop says maybe if you look objectively, the Lions were actually really bad at pass defense last season. So the average fan would say we sucked in all 4 secondary positions, but we know better. Yeah, I mean, we did kind of suck. I mean, when Brian Branch was in, the thing that I will never understand is when CJ Gardner-Johnson got more playing time than Brian Branch at the end of the season. I will never understand that. I want to be able to ask Aaron Glenn that question. Why on earth did you do that? A guy that's been playing great all season, has been a complete dog all season, and this guy just came off injury, hasn't played, and you're going to put him in over Brian? Like, really? Come on. That really blew it for me last year. I was upset at that. So to this point, I do believe that we do need to add 2 safeties, without a doubt. One in the draft, one in free agency. But at a minimum, we need 1. If we were to get 1, we'll be fine. I think that the safety room would be set, just wouldn't be set for camp. A lot of UDFAs will potentially be added to this team, cornerback and safety. Here's my hard take of the day. I really think that Brad Holmes is going to add an unusual amount of corners and safeties at the UDFA, or as UDFAs after the draft for camp. I think that he's going to add an unusual amount. As long as we have room on the roster, I think he's going to add a ton. So King SJ, out of curiosity, are there any potential safeties at 29? So there is, if you want to take Cooper and put him as a safety position, either one, he'd be fine at. But without a doubt, Cooper is probably the best day one starter to play corner, slide over to any corner position if you need him to. But he projects to me more as a safety. And I would love to see him play safety. So Cooper would be the only one, in my opinion. But you also have some pretty big corners, too, that I wouldn't say at 29, but you have some pretty big corners. Was it Jackson? I think he's like 6'3", 6'4", something like that. Huge. Like, that's too big, in my opinion, to be a corner. I think 6'1", 6'2" is probably tops for a corner. It just depends on the legs. Are the legs tall, long, or are they, a little bit shorter? Longer legs are usually a little bit harder to flip and turn. Yeah, I mean, we can agree to disagree, Salty. It's, you just got to go look at the tape and the stats, man. Kirby had a terrible year last year. Completely terrible. Ifeatu actually played pretty decent. News Drifter says CBS Sports latest mock draft projects Kool-Aid to the Lions at 29. Yeah, in the video I did the other day, I think it was pretty much a foregone conclusion. When you look at how many corners and how many safeties the Lions have brought in all of these visits, it's insane. So I think it's a foregone conclusion. The Lions are going to be adding a corner in this draft, and it could be early. First 2, out of the first 2 picks could be a corner. So next up, they said, or Jeff Risden says, offensive tackle. I don't know why my screen keeps doing that. Offensive tackle is the second most deficient need on this team. Now, this one still blows my mind. Maybe more so than safety. Because we have a starter in Taylor Decker. We have a starter in Penei Sewell. So before I even read what he wrote, we have 2 bona fide starters already that are amazing. So why would you want to replace them if that's what he's going to say? But why are we, in need of an offensive tackle this early as the second most needy position on the team? I think that we should add a right tackle that can fill in at right or left guard and that can be ready to play right tackle if Taylor Decker does not come back next year, or if Taylor Decker gets hurt and Penei Sewell can then slide over. But I, again, wouldn't say it's probably the second neediest position on the team that we need. See, Mike P asks about center. I would say that a center would be a bigger need right now than, well, actually, I take that back. Center would have been a bigger need had Graham Glasgow not been brought back for 3 seasons, because Graham can play center. So right tackle is where I'm at, because these right tackles can play the guard position. Absolutely. So here's what he says. The starting tandem of Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell is one of the best in the entire league. After that, the depth chart consists of Dan Skipper, Connor Galvin, and perhaps the 5th rounder, Kobe Sorsdahl, who the Lions are efforting to convert to guard. The top reserve tackle for the last few seasons, Matt Nelson, left in free agency. Skipper is great as a 6th offensive lineman, but the team has been reluctant to use him as a reserve behind Decker or Sewell. Finding a long-term solution for the top reserve tackle, and one that could potentially take over for Decker when his contract is up after next season, is imperative. So I do agree that we do need to find somebody that can take over for Decker, but that's not going to be a left tackle. I think that Penei Sewell is going to move to left tackle. That's his natural position. So unless Penei Sewell is like super comfortable after playing 4 seasons at right tackle, says, nah, I'm good, I'm just going to stay here, then yes, we would need a left tackle. But since I don't know that conversation, I don't know what Penei Sewell wants to do or what Dan Campbell or Brad Holmes want to do beyond that, I would say that right tackle makes the most sense to be able to fill in at both guard positions. And then next year, you draft whatever you need early. You can grab a left tackle next year. You could grab another right tackle next year. And I still think the Lions are going to add some more guard depth in this draft, and definitely UDFA. But in this draft, I think that we're going to see at least 2 offensive linemen taken for sure. Probably one early and one later, 5th, 6th round. We'll probably see another offensive guard or tackle taken. Decker Pecker says all we need is depth. 1st round pick is best available player no matter what position. Absolutely. I agree. News Drifter says they could take Cooper Beebe, possible at 61, who could play center or guard. Good point. I do like Cooper. I think his arms are a little bit short, and that's why I was going with Matt Goncalves. I think. Well, we'll find out Monday anyway. Pooney's decent. I like Pooney. I also like Jordan Morgan. This is a pretty deep draft for offensive linemen, to be honest with you. So 3rd most important position, according to Jeff Risdon, is cornerback. Now, this I would put based on who we have on the roster. I would say that corner would probably be number 2, if not number 1. And defensive end obviously would be the other 1 or 2. Offensive tackle / guard, just lineman in general, 2 or 3. I think that those are your 3 top positions. Defensive end, corner, safety, offensive lineman. Now, if you want to look at depth chart and who do we need based on the starters that we have, yep, we could walk right into this season with the guys that we have right now, and we'll be just fine because we've got plenty of defensive ends. We just don't know how good they are yet, but we could start the season right now and be just fine. Brandon Ayuk dropped San Fran from his social media. Well, he's not coming to Detroit, so don't even worry about that one. All right, so let's see what he says about corner. He says the position group has changed, but there is room for more change. Carlton Davis, Amik Robertson, Emmanuel Mosley, and Kendall Vildor represent the depth on the outside. With a Branch in the slot, Khalil Dorsey and Stephen Gilmore are holdovers who did not play much in 2023. With Branch being the only real slot corner, the draft attention could very well focus there as a priority, especially if the plan is to keep Branch in the mix at safety too. However, there are questions about Mosley's health and how well newcomers Davis and Robertson fit in on the outside in Aaron Glenn's defense. If there was questions, I don't know where these questions are coming from, but if there was questions about Robertson or Davis fitting on the outside, then why would Brad Holmes have even brought them in? So who has the questions? Is it fans? Is it media? Who has the questions? That's what I would like to know. Because Brad Holmes isn't going to bring somebody in that he doesn't feel can play the position. Now, I'm not saying I agree with the guys that Brad Holmes took over, other available guys, but he knows these guys better than we do. So I'm just banking on that he's right. Now, Meek obviously is a slot guy. So putting him on the outside would be a big risk. Now, he has manned the outside. He's done a pretty good job on the outside, but it's also been in limited capacity. He's primarily played slot corner when he was out west. So I believe that that's where they're projecting to keep him, is in the slot. And depending on what, set the Lions are in, what defense they're running, whatever scheme they're in, he could be on the outside. But I think the primary position for him is going to be in the slot, which has led me to believe Brian Branch is probably going to slide back to free safety more often than not. And we could see Brian play both ways. He could play both positions. On some packages, he could be free safety. On other packages, he could be, up in the nickel. And I think that would be absolutely insane of Aaron Glenn to do, because defenses are going to have a very tough time figuring out what to do when Brian Branch can play both positions and flow up and back, or up and down and across the, the defensive line. They're going to struggle. They're not going to know who's playing what position. I think it would be extremely smart of them to utilize that opportunity to disguise the defense even more so than what they tried to do last year, because it didn't work last year. So I think it would be extremely smart and wise of them to try to do it. What do we got going up in here? Brian Welsh says Minnesota is crazy to go up. It's going to cost them 2 first rounders plus, and they can get Penix at 11. Yeah. That's what I don't understand. But based on what their GM was saying today, or whenever it was recorded, I just happened to catch it when I was in the shower, that he's obviously not going to tell us what he's thinking. He's not going to tell anybody how many first round, grades he has on anybody. None of that. I think if he's going to move up to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, it's going to cost him his 2 first this year. And it's probably going to cost another 3rd round pick for him to do it. And that's why, to me, it wouldn't make sense. I would rather just take whatever quarterback you can get at 11 and then grab a weapon at 23. That would just make the most sense to me. But we'll see. Well, I hope that they make a bad decision. We'll see what they do. All right, we'll keep going with this here. So what do you guys think so far? I mean, based on what we're seeing, safety, offensive lineman, tackle, to be specific, and corner as our top 3 needs. We don't need, and the next step is wide receiver. So we haven't even gotten to the defensive end yet. So he says All-Pro Amon-Ra St. Brown heads up the top of the depth chart, followed by Speedy Jamison Williams and Khalif Raymond on the outside. Donovan Peoples-Jones is also back as the potential number 4 wideout. 2023 rookie Antoine Green and veteran Traquan Smith and perennial training camp hero Tom Kennedy, I like how he phrased that, are all in the mix as well. The urgency for a wide receiver largely depends on your view of Williams. The team expects JMO to be the number 2 wideout and take another jump forward in 2024. If you do not share in our ebullience on JMO, wide receiver probably ranks higher on the list. The team could still use a big target with some downfield ability to replace Josh Reynolds, who has been the Lions' number 2 wideout in catches and targets over the last 2+ seasons. With a deep draft class at the position, that's likely one of Detroit's priorities. So, yeah, I'm not sold on JMO yet because I haven't seen enough, but I will say this. The way he was progressing at the end of the season was exactly what I was hoping to see at the beginning of the season. I wanted to see him jump out in those first 4 or 5 games and really show some nice progression. And that's what he finished with. And I hope that he took that and he put it into his offseason program and said, you know what? This is where I've got to start next year. I can't go backwards. And hopefully he's working hand in hand with Amon-Ra St. Brown on consistency, getting those catches in every day. He shouldn't be going a day without catching a ball and really jump off the page to start this season and stay healthy above all else. He's got to stay healthy. So for that reason, because he hasn't been able to do any of that with any real consistency, I do believe that wide receiver is up there. So based on this list again, and I know what I already said, you know, that you've got corner up there at 1-2, defensive end up there at 1-2, offensive lineman everywhere and anywhere you can take one. At least 1 or 2 in this draft. At least 1 corner in this draft. Probably 1 safety in this draft. And then you've got wide receiver. But the Lions only have 3 picks in an area that's going to net us a potential game changer or immediate starter or immediate starting potential. So I think at pick 29 and pick 61 and pick 73, the Lions can find starting potential. Does it mean that all 3 are going to come in and just blow the doors off? No. Does that mean that they could end up earning a, bigger role halfway through the season? Absolutely. But 29 has to start, has to really show us, a difference over what we have already. And that's going to be easy to do because we got a lot of new players. And we got a much bigger, better defensive line already. Firestopper says, am I the only one who worries about JMO getting injured? Like every 3 to 4 games, he seems to get banged up, flopping around. He does. He kind of plays out of control. And, when I had Adam Aniba on, so Adam, independent scout, really does an excellent job scouting players. And Washington was supposed to select, or at least they thought, Jameson Williams that year. But the Lions then jumped up. So he heavily scouted JMO, and he said that JMO's kind of a freelancer. And that's why Goff and him, had some trouble. And that's part of the reason why some balls are off target or JMO can't find the ball or whatever the case may be, because he does freelance too much. He's not following the plan. He's got to hit his marks. He's got to hit his stride. He's got to be on time. He can't just be going wherever he wants. This isn't college ball. And you'll notice that with some of his route running. And I think towards the end of last season, he started to help, really dial it in and help Jared out that way. So I agree with you, man. That willy-nilly stuff will get you hurt in the NFL because you're putting yourself in a position to get hurt. And he took some nasty ones last year, man. He took some nasty hits. I'm surprised he got up from the one where both his knees or, his legs kind of went underneath him, hyperextended back. So anyway, I do believe that the Lions need a wide receiver. I absolutely do. But it's not for any of these reasons in here other than you just don't know what's going to happen with Amon-Ra St. Brown. If a deal doesn't get done, I've heard that there's been talk of a holdout. I don't think that'll happen. But at the same time, if a deal doesn't get done or Brown gets hurt, where is our next number 1 in this list? It's not Williams. It's not DPJ. It would have been Josh Reynolds. He could have filled in. So we need another number 1 on this team. I don't know what Traquan Smith has. I don't know what Antoine Green has, but I'm projecting Antoine Green to take a nice step up this year. We do need another number 1. We have to. Now, Sam Laporta can only fill in so much, but if you lose Amon-Ra St. Brown, who do you think is going to be the next heavily guarded guy? Sam Laporta. So then you're going to have to rely on Jahmyr Gibbs catching passes out of the backfield. You become more one-dimensional, and your team is going to have, a lot of problems. And that's where you don't want to be thin on the roster, and you want to have depth but good depth that can fill in. Well, I believe you there, Steve K. I think DPJ is gonna bounce back this year. He'll have a full off season. I just hope that he can produce like he was the season before he joined the Lions. So next up is finally defensive. Oh, wait, not edge. Tackle at 5. We just brought in Reader. We have a Lee McNeil signed this year. Now, we don't have a lot of depth next year because Lee McNeil is entering his last season. And who else? I think Levi Onwuzurike is entering his last season. And I think Josh Paschal has one more after that. But we just got Broderick Martin last year. So I'm hoping that, again, Brad Holmes is right on this one. And he's going to have a big step up this year. You know, better bounce back season, second off season, putting in the work. I guess we'll see what happens. But I do not believe that defensive tackle is a bigger need over defensive edge. Absolutely not. I just don't see it happening. And so then next, you finally got edge. Yeah, Hutch, I'm with you, dude. Like, what do you mean 6th? That's what he's saying. What the hell do you mean, Risden? 6th? Really, dude? Like, give me some help. So, all right, enough of this article. Absolutely love the fact that Risden puts this stuff out so that we can talk about it. His 7th was, by the way, was kicker. And that's where he ended. But I love that he puts this stuff out, and it's all opinion stuff. I'm just giving him a hard time. It's imperative, in my opinion, that the Lions address the defensive edge position with the first 2 picks, one of the first 2. And then I also believe that it's imperative that they address the cornerback position because we don't have a lot of depth after this year, and we do not have that true number 1. It would really be nice to have a top tier corner come in this year through the draft and not have to really be a starter with all of the pressure. Let Carlton Davis be that number 1 until he's not. Let the rookie be the number 2 and get his feet wet, and then be around all these veteran guys to help him really grow and blossom in his first year. Bend that corner, man. That's how you build a team that, in my opinion, anyway, that doesn't put your young rookies in harm's way by putting their feet to the fire. Now, Brian Branch, like he was saying, hey, I had to learn it now. I didn't have a choice. They just kind of threw me out there. I had to learn it now. And he did an excellent job. But he also came from Alabama that, they developed their guys a little bit differently at that school, or they did while Saban was there. And that's probably where you're going to want to bring some guys in from, is Alabama. And was this Saban's last year, right? So this is the last year that Brad Holmes is probably going to be looking at Alabama as, his top school to go and pluck some guys from, because it's not going to be the same. I saw Boyd come in. There was another guy I'll talk about here in a minute too. That's funny, Mike. I mean, he's an insider, but I think that his takes are wild. At any rate, look, I think the Lions are in a good position. I think that they have a pretty wide open opportunity in this draft to have a lot of success no matter which direction they go. But what's going to help our team grow the fastest is the question you have to answer at the end of the day. Where does that player need to fit on the hierarchy of the depth chart that we already have? And I'm going to go back and say something that I've been saying. I still think that we only need 2 playmakers, immediate playmakers from this draft. Just 2. That's all we need. And if the Lions can just manage to get two guys in that can hit the field right away, I think that we'll be head and shoulders, over where we were last year on this defense. And to be fair, I mean, the Lions finished top 19 in the league, 19th rated overall. Brad Holmes needs to make the moves that gets this team up into the top 12, top 10 this season. He needs to move up 10 spots on this defense if we even want an opportunity to do anything in the playoffs. Something's going on here. All right, so next up, let me see what you guys are saying here. Joseph Ostin says 2, maybe 1 at 29 and a rotation guy at 61. No, I think we can get 2. I think we can get 2 game changers in this draft. So last year, Joseph, how many would you say that we got last year? We only expected to get 2 last year. That's what Brad Holmes wanted. That's what he said. I want to go in and get 2 guys. That's what he was focused on. He mentioned it. I think it was around combine interviews. And we got 4. Exactly. We got 4 impact players last year. And so that's where I'm at this year. It's like, I don't see us getting 4, but I see us getting 2 that we need. Now, I could be wrong, but I still believe that defensive end is an area that we need another game changer in. I don't know Davenport to be a game changer. We don't know what Mintu Betts is. And so we don't have that luxury of being in the room and watching these guys work out and to seeing the stuff on the field. We can only go by the tape that we've seen from their past. Betts blew the doors off in his tape, but totally different league. And Davenport didn't do anything last year. The year before that, he had a pretty decent year, but I wouldn't say that it was crazy good or better than what we already had with Charles Harris or anybody else on the right side. So, yeah, to your point, Adam, if Hutch goes down, we're screwed. Yeah, we won't have another defensive end that can go in and get, 100 pressures a year. I just want him to get, I don't care if he gets pressured. I want to see more sacks and turnovers and fumbles and, game-changing plays, more stops. So that actually is probably a good segue, to talk about a guy that the Lions are now pegged to bring in. So according to ESPN, and this is another Jeff Risdon article. I'm hot on the Jeff Risdon stuff today. According to ESPN, the Lions are, or ESPN declares that the Lions are the landing spot for Darius Robinson, which I think would be great. I mean, I know that there's a lot of faster players, right? I think that there's some faster players in this draft, but if you're going to stay at 29, I'm all good with taking Darius Robinson. If you stay at 29, if you move up, I hope it's not Darius Robinson. Let's put it that way. I would rather see a Jared Verse make his way onto this team. A Dallas Turner versus Darius Robinson. I think that there's an intriguing argument there. Not one that I don't know that I would have an answer for either way, because I think that I think Jared Verse is head and shoulders above all those guys. But Darius Robinson's frame is just, it's so unique. Those don't come very often. It's like Joe Alt, right? Joe Alt is just a mammoth, giant dude, should be a generational talent at left tackle. Those do not come around very often. They just don't. And the guys like Darius Robinson with that size frame just don't come around very often. Myles Garrett is one of them. Unique frame. Ended up jumping out the gym and running as fast as a gazelle, man, for his size. And those are generational players, and he's shown it. I mean, he's a double-digit sack guy every single year. So I think it makes sense. it makes sense that we bring in another defensive end that can help hold it down if something happens to Hutch. Number one. Number two, why wouldn't you want to make one of the weakest parts of your defense last year, the cornerbacks, the defensive backs, better by making one of your stronger areas even stronger, which is the defensive line? I think that if you've already addressed it with Reeder, don't stop there. Keep going. Get another defensive end. Get him early. Someone that can bend the edge, get to the quarterback, that knows how to drop back, that can contain the edge, that has a high football IQ, that can play both sides of the ball. If Hutch goes down, he's got to be able to work. Mike P says, I agree. And if we get two, who can do what Brad's last two drafts have been able to do? Verse, then Robinson, then Turner. Yeah, man. Brad's killing it in the drafts. Absolutely killing it. We may not always agree with everything that he does, like last year. Okay. I don't think it's any secret that there's, a few people out there that are really stuck on Broderick Martin and the fact that he didn't play. But what, 12 snaps, 19 snaps, whatever, the whole season, didn't have any effect on any of the games. When he was in against the Raiders, he got pushed around. It was bad. But then again, I think when you look at the draft and you say, well, wait a second, we had 4 impact players. We had 2 rookies that absolutely blew the doors off the league between Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. Jack Campbell, I mean, he was a top 30 linebacker in the NFL. Pretty solid. And there was this whole thing I did in an episode where you talk about the draft value, where you pick them and how much their salary is. And then you have to kind of weight those two together of how good they are in the league and where you should have drafted them. Yeah, Jack Campbell probably should have been drafted late in the second round. But wait and see what he does this year. Like Brad Holmes always says, don't judge me this year, for this year's draft. Give me 2 to 3 seasons and let's see where these guys are. So if you had 4 impact players last year and Broderick Martin, obviously, Hendon Hooker didn't play. Broderick Martin barely played. But the 4 guys in front of him played pretty damn well. And the fact that you hit on 4 picks and 2 of them people were laughing in your face when you made them, I think we were pretty successful. I mean, if I don't say myself, I think it was pretty successful. We almost went to the damn Super Bowl because of those guys. Adam doesn't like the Jack pick. I do. I think the Jack's going to be just fine. I really do. J-Rod says, been watching, wrapping up some business. If we move up, we keep number 29 for D-Rob. Our move up is for JPJ. My thoughts. Why is JPJ not ringing a bell here? JPJ. Oh, Powers Johnson. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that we would move up. Personally, I don't think that we would move up to grab Powers Johnson that early. I think it would be defense. I really do. Or an offense or a wide receiver. I think if they move up, it's going to be a wide receiver, a cornerback, or a defensive end. I think those are your 3 choices. Because I still think, I mean, with how deep it is, you can get a really good tackle, a guard. There's a couple of centers later at 61. You could. And 73. I mean, those are almost back-to-back picks. But I like Jackson Powers. I just don't know, is he really worth moving up? Because you're going to have to give up some major draft capital. Major draft capital. Bobby Stark, Jaramillo says he's set on Dallas Turner. Just watch the highlights. Yeah, I like Turner, man. So the scoring system that I put together had Turner as like the most elite, had Darius Robinson as like the second most elite. I think Chris Braswell was like third or something like that. But then you had some no-name guys like Jalix Hunt. Who else was in there? Jalix Hunt. I'm not going to pull it up. I can't remember now. But Jalix Hunt was pretty high on the list. And their tape's not the greatest, but you know, their body type and their speed and their measurable, everything is pretty elite. Brian Walsh, JPJ didn't give up a sack in college. It sounds like a Frank Ragnow kind of guy. So look, if we trade up, I mean, I spoke about it the other day. 29 to somewhere between 12 and 15 or 12 and 17, which is where I believe you need to be, somewhere between 12 and 17 to get either Jared Verse or Dallas Turner, Terrion Arnold, Quinion Mitchell, Brian Thomas. I don't think Rome Odunze is going to slip to 12. But to get a player like that, of that caliber, 12 to 17, I think is where you need to be. And to do that, it's going to cost you pick swap 29 for whatever. Let's just say pick 15, 29 for 15. And it could be as high as a second round pick in 2024. It could be a third round pick at 24 and a third round pick in a third round pick in 25 and a third round pick in 26 with maybe an extra booster of a sixth round pick in 24. So you could potentially trade 4 picks for 1 and lose 2 third round picks. I mean, that would be an almost even trade, you know, with those types of picks. But something tells me nobody's going to trade for less than a second round pick in 25 and probably still want something out of 24 outside of a pick swap. I think it's going to be expensive, especially because it's the Lions. I don't know. I think Brad Holmes is taught the rest of the NFL that if you give him an inch, he's going to take a mile. If you let him even weasel his way in front of you, he's going to snake you. And he's done it to just about everybody so far. Not saying that he's intentionally snaking people, because when you make a trade, it's not like they know who you're picking. They have no clue. Bob W. says choice of quality versus quantity. I think that's a good point too, man. Like, I don't need 8 picks this year. I just need 4 really good ones, you know, and then you could fill in your depth, round out the practice squad with a bunch of UDFA guys if you really needed to. Yeah, somewhere I read or heard or something that the Bears were panicking. I don't remember where this came from, but someone just mentioned the word panicking there in the chat. And I don't think that the Bears are panicking at all. I really don't think so. They're going to take Caleb Williams at number 1. And then after that, I think that they're going to either add an offensive lineman or a wide receiver to give him either protection or a weapon. I think that that's the way that goes. If they take another defensive player, I would be really surprised. But this is polls that we're talking about. You know, if I were polls, I would trade number 9 and move back a little bit and pick up some extra draft capital, unless there's somebody that he really wants at number 9. Yeah, that would be interesting, Brian, if Brian Thomas Jr. turns out to be the best wide receiver. Shadow Viper 619 says if there's no defensive end available at 29, maybe no defensive end on Brad's big board, to move back and gain another second and a fourth and go to work. Yeah, I think that it would be wise to gain a pick somewhere between 35 and like 45, 48. I think it would be really wise to gain another pick right there. Absolutely. So let's see what was next on the list here. We had another helmet. So Lions and the rest of the NFL. Now, I'm sure you guys have already heard this, but there's now going to be a third alternate helmet. Phones in just like 2 minutes, Adam. Third alternate helmet. So last year, the Lions, The Lions obviously debuted their new helmets last year. Loved them, by the way. Thought they were great. And it was the first time that the team had an alternate helmet design since playing with the blank silver ones. You know, the silver bullets that they wear with the old throwback unis. And so now all NFL teams are going to be allowed to have a third alternate design. And the way that this reads, you know, some of the rules here, it's available. It's out there now on Lions Wire. You can read all the rules. Basically, just says that the NFL approved a third game eligible helmet design with some restrictions on usage, like the alternate blue helmets for the Lions last year. And the new design must match the team's historical color scheme if worn with standard uniform combinations. In other words, it may only be worn with the color rush, the grays, or the gray jerseys and pants, or a specific alternate uniform. So it's the alternate helmet's got to match their color scheme. Or if they go a different route, it can only be worn with the alternate uniform. I think that they should just be allowed to do whatever the heck they want, to be honest with you. And lastly, on my list, before we open up the phone lines here, speaking of uniforms, Rod Wood feels like the Lions' new jerseys will become one of the NFL's greatest jerseys ever. And don't forget, this is going to be released here in just about 6 short days. The Lions will be unveiling the new jerseys and pants combination next week. And the idea of getting, you know, some fresh gear ahead of this season after an amazing run last year, I just think is going to excite the fan base even further. Obviously, the goal here is to sell a bunch of merchandise. The Lions are coming off a pretty incredible year. Isn't it weird how that lined up? The Lions have an amazing season, and then all of a sudden they're getting the draft in New Jerseys. Does that speak to a script to anybody? I know that there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there, but it's a business. And the Lions, like I said last year, are great for business. And now they're probably going to sell $100 million worth of jerseys and new merchandise. So it's kind of weird how it's lining up. Eric, I haven't heard that the grays are being retired with the new color. They'll be able to have whatever their alternate. They still have to have their alternate. So we have the whites, the blueberries. Ornery U of M dad says, I swear my neighbor is an alien. Might have to expand upon that one. So we'll have the whites, the blueberries, and then the alternate, which would be, or I'm sorry, the helmet. You've got the traditional helmet, right? Goes with the blueberries. And you've got the whites with the whites. And then you have the new helmet. They can go with the new alternate uniform if we get a new alternate uniform. Because right now I think the alternate uniform is the grays. But our new uniform is going to be our new uniform, from what I understand. I just don't know if something's going to happen to the blueberries or the whites, or if we get to keep them all. Let's see what Rod Wood had to say about it. He said, so I think our goal was to honor the past. We have great colors, we have great history, but also put a modern twist on it. So I think you see them, you'll see both of those things. And you'll see hopefully uniforms that propel us for at least the next 5 years to be one of the great uniforms in the NFL. And we're never going to change them dramatically, but there's always an opportunity to modernize them. And I think people will see that. You know, the thing that I really liked is the new gray, that dark charcoal gray hat. I would love to see a uni like that pop with that blue and silver and some white, you know, riddled in there. I think it would look great. Blueberries, the blueberries got to stay. We can never get rid of those. So Bucky brings up a good point here. Yeah, the cornerback visits. I don't think that Brad's going to waste time like that. I don't think that he's going to bring guys in that he doesn't intend on drafting, at least one of them. I think he's just trying to do his due diligence. If you remember what Brad said this offseason, he said that, drafting a corner is extremely difficult. And finding the right one is like extremely hard. And he felt like he's a really good evaluator at corner. He said he wasn't tooting his own horn or whatever, but he's a really good evaluator at corner. And it just sometimes it takes time. You may go a couple of seasons up finding a number one. But when you find one you like, obviously you want to do what you can do to get them. Now I'm paraphrasing here, but bringing in 12 or 13, whatever the number is now, corners between top 30 visits and the combine visits, the local pro day visits, it tells me we're getting a corner. Absolutely getting a corner. I think when you look at the last, 3 drafts, the guys that Brad Holmes brings in get drafted in every single draft. You're going to have 1 or 2 outliers, every year because, the later rounds, you just don't know what you're going to get. But if you look back at the history, and maybe I'll do another video on this because we've spoken about it at length during podcast, how I've gone through and looked at, the entire list of what Brad Holmes was bringing in, who he met with as a Ram, and how a lot of those players are now Detroit Lions, and the players that he met throughout the draft process ended up being Detroit Lions too. There's only a couple outliers like Broderick Martin. I don't think was one that was on the list last year. Jaster says he's ornery U of M dad's neighbor, and he is correct. Who has Brad brought in that's an edge? To your point, Brent, here, let me find out for you. I wrote it all down the other day. I'm on 2 computers right now, so you just got to bear with me for just a second here. All right, so that was quicker than I thought. The Lions have met with, this would have been the combine. Let's see here. Oh, maybe I didn't write them all down. I just wrote all the corners down. A lot of corners. Hold on a sec. Pride of Detroit has been running a tracker, but I have found that some of it is a little off. Like they don't have everybody on here. But defensive tackle Michael Hall, who's actually on my list to talk about tonight, and defensive tackle Christian Boyd. Now I know those aren't edges, but defensive tackles. And Judge Culpepper, James Esther, Justin Rogers, Rook Aurora, all defensive tackles. Rook, though, can play edge. As far as edge goes, you got Ovi Ogufu and Darius Robinson, Jalen Harrell, and Nelson Caesar, Marshawn Nealand, Darius Robinson again, Braylon Trice, Javon Solomon. That's the one guy that I had on my list that actually graded out pretty high. Just not for anybody else. And then another defensive tackle, Johnny Newton, of course. So a lot of edge, a lot of defensive tackle, a ton of corners and safeties, and a handful or more of wide receivers. I mean, a lot of wide receivers. You've got, I'm pretty sure that's your draft. That's what we're getting, guys. We're getting a corner, we're getting a wide receiver, we're getting an edge, probably getting a safety. There's only a linebacker on here like once. You've got a running back on here, I think, once. So I think that's your draft. Maybe one defensive tackle too. Round it out. I love Rook, man. If we were to grab Rook and Darius, game over. Absolute game over. All right, so the last thing I have, and then we'll open up the phone lines here, is the Lions brought in this defensive tackle who has not been on my sites at all, nowhere near my radar. And it was Michael Hall, I believe is his name. Lions brought in Michael Hall for a top 30 visit, Ohio State University. He is 6'3", 290 pounds. Now, someone said that he was a funny size for a defensive tackle in the NFL. I didn't know that 6'3", 290 was a funny size for a defensive tackle. Like, to me, that's almost a perfect size for a defensive tackle. Could have a few more pounds added on, but being that weight, he could be a little bit of a tweener between edge and inside tackle, defensive tackle. As far as where he's ranked, let me pull up the list here. All right, so according to NFL Draft Buzz, which this can't be right, they got Latu as the number 1 overall edge, Jared Verse at number 2. Then they got Jerzon Newton at number 3. So it's a combination of edge and defensive line. Byron Murphy at 4, Chop Robinson at 5, Darius Robinson at 6, Trevonde Sweat at 7, Chris Jenkins at 8, Adisa Isaac at 9, Braden Fisk at 10, Braylon Trice at 11, Rook Aroro at 12. And then Michael Hall is at 16. And right now he is slated to go in the second round. So he could be picked 61, 70, 73. Somewhere in that range. J Mommy says the Lions looked at someone from the CFL. Who was that? Where did you hear that from? Because at this point, they've got to be on the list. They have to be on the actual list. If they're going to bring them in, they have to be a top 30 visit. Or a local visit, which if they're from the CFL, obviously they're not local. Unless they played high school in the States. There is that big guy out there, that big offensive lineman or whatever. Let's see here. So you must be talking about the 6'9" lineman David Neville. Is that who you're talking about? Or Giovanni Manu? Russell Wilson. I'm not sure what you're talking about here. All right, we'll move on. So anyway, Michael Hall, pretty interesting prospect. I mean, he's doesn't really break the bank for me either direction. Like, I'm not extremely excited about him. I don't think that he's a bad choice by any means. He's got good arm length. He's got a decent 40. I mean, actually ran really well in the 40 4.78 is fairly elite. He has an elite wingspan. His height at 6'3". Look, I mean, there's guys at defensive line that are doing it at 6'1", at 6 foot. Yeah, why can't he do it at 6'3"? His weight at 290. Yeah, he could be a little bit undersized depending on what you're looking for. If you want a nose tackle, yeah, he's undersized. But if you want someone that can rush the quarterback and you want a pass rushing defensive tackle, the guy's probably a perfect weight. He's got giant mitts for hands. He threw up 25 reps on the bench. He got explosive legs with 111 inch broad jump. So the guy's actually pretty interesting. He's rated in the top 92 percentile for pass rush, which, look, that's what he is then, right? He's a pass rushing defensive tackle. And next to Ali McNeil and DJ Reader, Ali McNeil is the closest we have to a pass rushing defensive tackle, and he's just not it. He's not really a pass rushing defensive tackle. But if you were to add a guy like this and you were to put 3 of those guys on the line and go with a big, heavy set like that to stop the run, but one of those guys can actually rush the quarterback, that's kind of a scary, defensive line if you think about it. So does it make sense to bring him in? Probably. I'd have to watch some tape on the guy. I only got a few clips in today, so I really haven't studied him a whole lot. No, I'm definitely not pounding the table for him, but Brad Holmes will. Every player he brings in, he's going to pound the table. Guaranteed. As far as the DUI for Sweat, yeah, look, I don't know, man. There was some tweets out there that were saying like he was 25% over the legal limit, and making it sound like it was really bad when the legal limit, if it's 0.08, that means that he blew a 0.10 or whatever you want to call it. It's not that crazy. I get it. If you broke the law, you broke the law, you broke the law. But to me, when you're blowing a 0.20, 0.25, that means that you're being extremely irresponsible. Extremely, right? The guy's 366 pounds. So you must have drank enough, obviously, to affect his blood alcohol level. But it just, yeah, I don't know, man. I think that it's going to be some questions that he's going to have to answer. Why are you doing this before the draft? Like, what made you think it was okay to go do this? Don't you worry about your future? And would you put this before the team? Do you have a problem with alcohol? Like, what's going on? I do think that it's going to have him slide in some areas. I think that it would hinder him from being a Detroit Lion potentially. I don't know. At least nobody got injured. Nobody got hurt. That's a big plus. I think because of that, it may not hurt him as much as if there was an accident involved. So, look, I think it's stupid. I think it calls into questions, but I also think that everybody makes mistakes too. And he's going to have to explain this one away that is going to have to sell these teams into believing that it was just one mistake and it's not going to happen again. Look, if Jalen Carter can go top 10, I think that Trevonde Sweat's going to be okay. I don't think he's going to slide a ton. But I just don't know if Brad Holmes is going to take a risk on risky players more so than he does injured players. I think that he would rather take an injured player over a riskier behavior player. Does that make sense? From what I know, J-Rod, from what I read, it was alleged it was just alcohol. I don't know if there's anything else in there. And then you got Rashee Rice, 119 miles an hour. That's craziness. But 119 miles an hour is not fast, in my opinion. It's fast in an inner city. It's fast when you're not out in the big long stretch of country road or on a track somewhere, a known desert land where you can get away with it in Arizona. That was stupid. Like, he could have killed himself and others. I've gone much faster, obviously, on motorcycles and things like that, but in safe areas where we're allowed to do it, that's zooming though in that little car, Lamborghini or whatever he's in. That thing's just a piece of plastic. He's lucky he's still around. And he's lucky he didn't hurt somebody else. Worse than what he did, because he did, put some people in the hospital. They got banged up pretty bad. So he lucked out. Those people did not. And yeah, I mean, just stupid. Like, you got millions of dollars sitting in front of you. You're going to waste your life like that. I don't get it. You want to race, go to the track, It's easier said than done, I guess. I can't say that I've never not sped myself. We all have. All right, so let's open up these lines. Let's get some people on the phone line. And I'm way late tonight. 9:20 already. All right, phone numbers in the chat, 313-312-0348. Give us a jingle. Let's talk some football. I do have some very big news, though, tonight. Some very, very big news that was confirmed. And I'll tell you guys right after this caller. Give me 1 second. All right, we have Adam on the line. Adam, what's happening, man? How are you?
Hey, good evening, man. Listen, before I want to talk about the draft before I start. I don't remember if I heard like a video of you, but I don't think the 3 games in 11 days excuse is valid for us to use, only because every team that plays on Thanksgiving has to go through that. You know what I mean? I don't see any of the other fan bases complaining about that. And like, yes, the players were tired or whatever. But like the Packers had to do 3 games in 11 days as well. The Cowboys did it. The 49ers did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know that for a fact. And did this just come up recently or something?
I don't remember if it was a video of you or somebody else. Like, I just remember someone was saying it, so I just wanted to like sing it. Yeah, like I like sit there and I look at the schedule a lot on my free time whenever I'm bored. And I noticed that a lot of the teams did play the 3 games in 11 days before for Green Bay, I believe before they had us, they had the Chargers, and then they played in Pittsburgh before they came to us.
Right.
But yeah, anyways, that's besides the point. Listen, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I found you through Derek, and how do you think he would react if the Lions trade up to 12? Latu and Turner and all these guys are there, and they go in the draft like a wide receiver or an offensive lineman.
Oh, Derek's gonna lose it for sure. he wants an edge all day, man. He wants an edge. He absolutely wants an edge. So I think, look, if they circled back around in the second round and still ended up with a pretty good edge rusher, I think he might be all right. I don't know. I think that we know Derek wants an edge rusher. He's been screaming for an edge rusher and a defensive line and a pass rush for like 5 years, man. So that's what's on his mind,
yeah. It's on my mind too, because you made the argument that after Amon-Ra, we have nobody else.
Right.
After Hutch, we have nobody else.
Right.
Yep. And I'm gonna save my criticism until the end of day 3, because the draft isn't just Thursday.
Right.
But I will be pacing, the living room, hoping that we draft an edge in the first round.
Adam, hold on, Adam. Let me ask you a question. So, what if, let's say Brad doesn't move up? Let's say the Lions move back Like here's the way I evaluate a draft board. So let's say you're at 20, you're at 29, and let's say on your draft board, 9 guys that you want in that draft in the first 2 rounds are still there, and someone wants to trade pick 35 for 29, and you get another pick, let's say, late 40s, early 50s. So that you're going to get one of those 9 guys guaranteed. And you trade back and you get one of those 9 guys that were on your board. And it just so happens to be an edge rusher, but maybe it's the 3rd or the 4th best edge rusher. Would you be upset that we got him in the 2nd round versus the 1st round and then added an extra pick late in the 2nd round that you could then get your wide receiver and your corner?
No. Like, my whole thing is one of these picks, early picks, needs to go to the other side of Hutch.
Yeah, I agree.
My whole thing. I don't care if it's the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd. It needs to be him, because at the end of the day, I've only been an NFL fan since 2014. The only elite secondary with subpar pass rush that I've ever seen these 10 years was the Legion of Boom. Every other elite secondary, quote unquote, had a really good pass rush in front of them. And as I was watching the show, I went and I looked up team total in sacks. Since 2019, at least one of the representatives in the Super Bowl has been top 10. We were 23rd last year, or in the 20s. We need to get into the top 10.
Are you talking about the defense?
I'm saying sacks, like number of sacks.
Oh yeah, sacks. No, our sacks were terrible. So the thing with the Super Bowl stats and the Super Bowl winner stats,
sacks, not stats.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that the overall stats and where you need to be in the Super Bowl. So it's usually a top 15 defense, usually top 10. Sorry, occasionally a top 15 defense will win the Super Bowl. It's always a top 5, top 3 offense that wins the Super Bowl. And as far as sacks go, yes, you do need to be in the top 10 or top 15 in sacks to be able to have a chance at winning more games throughout the season to be able to get to the Super Bowl. So not all stats correlate with winning a Super Bowl, but they help you get there. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care how they make it to the Super Bowl. They could win every game 10-9. I would like for us to win the Super Bowl. And I tell you how we're not going to do that, by continuing to allow 3rd and long conversions.
Right.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, obviously Brad Holmes is the GM. We trust in his plan or whatever. If they trade up for an elite corner, right, let's say, to me, I'm still going to be skeptical, because, okay, you can cover, but if you have 10 seconds to cover, eventually you're not going to be able to hold up, So that's why I'm pounding the table for an edge. One last comment I have to say real quick. I am excited for the funeral that the Detroit Lions will be having of the San Francisco 49ers whenever we play them. I will be looking forward to going to that game. I hope that we bury that team into the ground. I personally feel like the Lions will be more motivated to beat them than Dallas, only because I feel like they proved, all right. So in Dallas, they proved to me that they can compete in the playoffs. That's what they did for Dallas. So right. I wasn't upset that they lost, only because they showed me that they can hang. That's all I wanted from that game. San Francisco, they showed me that they were ready. But they were just stupid. They're ready, but they're stupid. And now they need to just get smart. And I really think that they're going to roll into San Francisco whenever that is. They're probably going to save that matchup for December. Whenever that is, and they're going to roll in there, and they're going to bury them. Anyway,
I believe it.
Again, thank you for your show. I really learned a lot. And I hope you have a great weekend.
Hey, you too, my man. Appreciate you calling in, Adam. Thanks for the knowledge you just dropped on us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right. So while Adam was dropping knowledge, there was a question in the chat by Joseph Ostin. Said trade up to 12. How much will that cost? So I did two scenarios real quick if you guys were watching. So let's just say the Lions want to move up to 12, which is a number that they seem to love. And quite honestly, it could go many different ways. But let's just say 29. We give up 29 and 2/3, thirds, maybe 2025 and 2026. You give up the next 2 third-round picks. I don't think that a team would bite for that, only because you're barely moving the needle, and you're giving up 1368 in points, and you're bringing in 1310. So if I was the trading partner, I would say, you know what? That's not enough for me, because not only do I have to wait 2 seasons to get my picks back, you're barely giving me anything more than what I really need. So that's why I feel like it's going to take a second round pick in 2024. I don't think the Lions would be stupid enough to give up their first 2 picks to move up 1 pick. But let's just say the Lions are going to finish, I would love to say they win the Super Bowl in 24, but let's be realistic here. Let's say they finish in the top 8. Okay. They don't, make it to the NFC title game, just for purposes of putting together a trade. So let's just say their 26th pick. That's going to put them at, 52. Let's just call it 52. That would be a trade that I think the Lions could pull off. They'd have to give up next year's second round pick to get somebody's 12th, 12th through 17th. Now, obviously, if you get, south of 15, you might be able to do something like, all right, 85 third round pick or late third round pick in 2024. And let's just call it a 5th round pick in 2025. What's that look like? Yeah, it's a little short. So I don't think that it would happen. It's a little short. So if you were to give up a 3rd round pick in 2024 and a 4th round pick in 2024, that we have 2 of them, maybe that gets us a little bit closer. And it's still a little far off. So I think that's what we're looking at, guys and ladies, is we're going to have to give up 2/3 or a 2nd and potentially a 5th this year, because they're going to want something potentially this year out of the trade. So let's just call it, I'll just call it pick 60 next year and a 5th this year. What's our 5th round pick this year? I'd hate to give up our 5th round pick. I just hope Brad does something to get us more picks in this draft. So our 5th round pick this year is pick 163. And there you are. You're at 1386 again. So I think that's a possibility right there. Adam, that's a good point. So what did Minnesota give up to get pick 23 from Houston? Let's find out. I'll pull this off the screen for just a minute. Keep in mind that draft day trades are usually more expensive. So Minnesota sent their 42nd and 188th overall selections this year, along with a 2nd round selection in 2025 to Houston for 2 picks. And that was the other thing that I was saying, earlier was yesterday, that I could see the Lions having to do multiple pick swaps. Like, someone wants to move up even further than where they are already. So let's do this trade here. This is what we'll put Minnesota on the left, Houston on the right. So Minnesota sent 42, 23, 188, 232. And a second round pick in 25, which we'll just say 45. That's a big jump. 2,000 to 1,300. So 700 point difference. That is a big jump. So that's not trading a first round pick, though. That's the thing, is they're not swapping first. So you could give up 2 seconds and, you know, essentially what was let me pull that back up. 2 seconds and 188 is what, a 6th round pick? Right? It's 5th round pick. So 2 seconds and a 5th straight up just to move up to 23. I mean, would you do it? Would you guys trade 2 seconds and a 5th to add an extra first this year? I don't know. Would that be better than doing a pick swap? 29, 12. Call it the 3rd round pick, or just a 1 second round pick next year. Pretty even trade. So you're getting a 2nd round pick for someone to move up 17 spots. They're probably going to want, guaranteed, they're going to want probably a 3rd in 2025 or 2026. So a 2nd and a 3rd to move up 17 slots, potentially. I don't know. The doors are wide open on this one. Wide open. I wouldn't put it behind Brad Holmes not to do it, or above him to do it. I think that he's probably got some framework already built out, like I said earlier, on some trade options. I don't like how he always waits till the last minute to do things. Like if there's an opportunity to make a trade, why not just get it done and over with? And have that pick ready now. The only benefit to waiting and the detriment to waiting is twofold. So if you wait, well, now nobody is going to know what you're trying to select. And then on draft day, you pull the rug out from somebody else and you jump ahead of them and you screw up the draft. You screw up everybody's thought process. If you trade now, then everybody's probably looking at it like, okay, Minnesota, for instance, they've got 11 and 23, but we know they're picking there, but what are they trying to do? They're probably trying to move up. So where do we need to be? So it tells all the other teams that now they have to try to move up if they need to move up, or if they're trying to get ahead of Minnesota at all, trying to get at pick 22 or pick 10, pick 9, pick 8, wherever. It tells them where they need to be. Now, if they would have waited until draft day, well, then teams maybe didn't have a whole lot of an option on draft day to move up. Donovan, yeah, I'm curious as to why we haven't traded out of the first round yet, so people can know they are not picking on day one. I think that goes to what I was just saying, Donovan. Like, you don't want to show your cards. You know what I mean? You want to hold them close to your vest. But I think that it would also be smart too, if you have an opportunity to move up, to just do it and get it over with. Because what happens if that trade falls through on draft day? What if the draft goes bonkers in the first 10, 12 picks. And now your trade partner's like, oh, no, I'm good. I'm sticking where I'm at now. The player I want's right there. Didn't expect him to be, but now they are. It's definitely a dance, man. We could do some trade scenarios, but you know what we didn't do last time we were on, or a couple times ago, is we did not do the over the cap roster extension valuation. You guys want to do it real quick? And that way you can kind of see why it doesn't make sense to move off of Taylor Decker. Let's see here. All right, we'll do it real quick. If you guys don't want to do it, you just let me know and we'll stop it. We're about done anyway. I'm about out of topics for tonight. I know it's a lot, right? Will doesn't have something to say. Isn't that funny? I can hear him now. All right, so let's just take a look at where we are right now. Lions have 27. We'll just round up 27.7 million in draft capital. 27.7 million. Okay. Bucky, I'm trading for Micah Parsons. I thought you said something earlier about Micah Parsons. I don't have an opinion right now on Micah Parsons. I don't know if he's a fit on this team. And honestly, I don't know what's going on with him right now, but I don't know. I don't think that. I think he's going to cost too much money for what the Lions are trying to do, or too much draft capital. Quite honestly. I don't remember how old Micah Parsons is either. So here we go. Hold on a second here. All right, so here we go. So if we're going to extend Jared Goff, this is to the Lions' benefit to get this done. And I'll show you how, based on what the draft is, or what the draft what the extension is projected to be right now, like what, 190 million. Over 4 seasons. So let's just call that a 3-year extension. He's going to make 32 million this year. So that would be 158 million over 3 years. That would be 52.6 million per year is what that would be projected to be. Unless you're looking at a 4-year, $190 million deal added on to his last year, which would make it a 4-year extension good for 5 years. And at that case, then it would be 192 plus 32 divided by 5 would be about 44.8 million per year. I think that would be phenomenal if the Lions could work that out, where you're only paying them on average 45 million per year. I just don't think it's realistic. I think that it's more realistic that Jared Goff is probably going to get paid in the neighborhood of $53 million a year on average, no matter which way you slice the pie. If you gave him 180 million plus his 32 million, and you did a 3-year deal. I'm sorry. You did 150 million over 3 years. So it's 50 mil a year plus his 32. It's 182 million. Divide that by 4 years. That's about 45.5 million per season. So let's just do this. We're going to extend them. And we're going to add 1, 2, 3. Well, let's do a 3-year extension. Let's just say we're going to give them, wish I had my sheet in front of me, but 150 million times, let's go 65%. We'll go 67% guaranteed. So that'd be 100 million, 2 years guaranteed. It's about average. Actually, let's look at the Kirk. Let me look at the Kirk Cousins deal. So you got 180 million, 4 years, 180 million with 100 million guaranteed. That's 55.5% guaranteed. Give me 1 second here. I want to see if I can find out what his signing bonus was. $50 million in signing. Okay. So we're going to do 60 million signing. Yeah, we're going to add a void year in this. We'll add 2 void years. I think it's only going to give me 1 that matters. And he's going to have 100 million in guaranteed. So let's just say, so this year he was due to get a base salary of 22 million with his prorated bonus that would count against it would be 17 million. His guaranteed salary, we'll just fully guarantee his first year and be done with it. It's not going to let me. Oh, yeah, it will let me change the base. All right. So right there, we just save 5 million off the first year. Give me 1 second. I'm going to set it up just like Kirk Cousins' contract. Oh, shoot. So if you see these non-prorated bonuses here, so these are like roster bonuses. So no guaranteed money in the last 2 years of his deal. And you've got these roster bonuses. So all of this prorated bonus, that 60 million is all guaranteed. And then the rest of his guaranteed money over here, which would be 27.5 plus the 12.5. So that's 40 plus 60. That's 100 million guaranteed. So based on these numbers, I mean, that's exactly like Kirk Cousins' deal minus the void years. So he would have to make the roster in 2026. The way this would look is you would pay Jared Goff 29.5 for 24, 39.5 for 25, and then you could either cut him, trade him, whatever you want to do in 2026, and he has no guaranteed money. But he gets all of his bonus money would have to come due. So if you did move off of him in 2026, you would pay him essentially $36 million in 2026. So we'll pay him just like Kirk Cousins. And let's see what happened. So now our cap space went up. We just gained a couple $1 million in cap space by doing an extension on Jared Goff. Now, this whole Cameron Sutton thing. So I looked at this earlier today, and Cameron Sutton actually just saved us about $10 million this year. I think he's a post June 1 designation, which means I think that they can kick the money that's owed to him like over 2 seasons. So we're potentially going to be getting back like 10 million, 10.5 right here. This number down here, this 10.5 back is what we're supposed to get back. Here, I'm sorry. I'll make that a little bigger. So that'll be good. We should be getting some money back here after June 1, which will obviously help the Lions. Now with Taylor Decker. So Taylor Decker is set to make 19 million this year. I mean, obviously the dude can play. You know, is he worth 19 million a year? I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, there's some guys making a lot more money than that are playing left tackle. I think for what he provides and his type of leadership and the type of guy he is, I mean, he's always been solid. Always. I think it would be smart to try to extend Taylor Decker another season and add a void year or two to help your cap situation out. What's up, Cleef Snob? How you doing? We got Roger Chappis in the house too. So let's go down to Monroe St. Brown. Now, it's been projected that this guy is going to get, like $25 million a year. So what was the most recent wide receiver deal that was just done? Oh, let's see here. There had to be a recent wide receiver deal. I can't remember now. It wasn't Devontae Adams. Was it Tyreek Hill? Was he the most recent big time wide receiver deal? Might have been. The guy that went to the Titans from the Jags. Calvin Ridley, did he get a new deal? Let's see here. Titans swooped into the last minute and Ridley signed a 4-year, $92 million contract that included $50 million guaranteed. So, all right. I mean, so that's a good comparison now for St. Brown because he had 76 receptions for 1,016 yards and 8 touchdowns for the Jaguars last season. I mean, obviously it's not, close to what St. Brown did, about 500 yards short and about, 30 balls short or whatever, but still, it's a very comparable contract to look at, what is the market really going to bear for St. Brown? That's 23 million a season and roughly, 55% guaranteed. So let's go with 25 million, 4 years. I'm adding in my void years if I can. St. Brown's last year is added into this. So let's do a base salary of here. Let me pull up Ridley's. All right, so we'll take a little page out of Ridley's contract here and try to emulate it with St. Brown. Leave his base salary alone. We'll put a he's got a per game bonus. So I don't see that happening with St. Brown. I don't see them giving him a per game bonus at all. But if we do 4 years, 100 million plus what he has left on his contract, which is 3.366, and his prorated bonus, so 3.5, so that'd be 100 million, 103 million, 562.15. Okay. So let's add 10 million to this. So that'd be 13. 366. Signing bonus of 54 million. I don't know why my mic keeps chopping out. I'm going to have to get that fixed. Base salary with a prorated bonus, guaranteed salary. We'll fully guarantee all of it. Signing bonus. Nope, I'm sorry. I did the wrong signing bonus. We'll give him 5, 10, 15, 20. 24 million. 24 million. There we go. So that we just have another 30 million of guaranteed money to give them. So you got 14, 362, 315 there. Minus 30 million. 15, 637 to go. No money in his last 2 years. $20, $40, $60. So how does that work? 67. 1 second. 67, 960. $26, 980. 114 million. doesn't make any sense. Okay. All right, there we go. Oh, I'm short somewhere. I needed another 5 in there. I don't know what I did. Something's not right. All right, there we go. Now we're getting somewhere. This is what sucks when you do this stuff live because it takes a ton of math to try to figure all of this out. So if he's going to get 55 million guaranteed on a, 4-year, $100 million extension, that's, 4 years added on to his last year, right? 24 million signing, 55 million guaranteed. So if you're giving him a signing bonus of 24, you've got 30 million left to pay him in guaranteed money. Let's just say you're going to pay him 10 million guaranteed in this year. No, we'll just do 8,362,315 in his first year. That matches everything from his last year. It's gone, plus an additional bonus. Guaranteed matches his cap. The next year, you're going to have to jump up and pay him some loot. So his base salary is probably going to be in the neighborhood of, let's just go 20 million plus his prorated bonus, fully guaranteed. That number should be a little bit more than that because we got 30 million left to pay him. All right, I think those numbers match. 1, 2, 3, 4. 20, 40, 50, 60, 84. That's close. Okay, so I'm sure I'm losing a lot of people here just trying to get through all this, but on Amon-Ra's, extension, what happened to our cap? So our cap was at 27, what was it, 27.6 or something like that, 27.7. So if we extend Jared Goff, which mimics almost identical to Kirk Cousins' deal, right? So we know it's a pretty solid number in here. We gained a few million, and then we extended Amon-Ra St. Brown. All right, his cap number went from like 3.3 to 8.3, so an extra 5 million this year. And the cap number we've only gone down to 25 million.6. So we've only lost like 2 million in cap dollars. So these deals can get done with who we have on the roster. And we still have plenty of money left, so about 12 million, 13 million of our cap right now is dedicated to the rookies. And the way that can really be figured out is a little bit of a longer process. So if you look at the top 51, the top 51 right now is 231, 497, 992. When you add the rookie class in here, it's going to filter some of these bottom numbers out. So, like your first and second round guys, they're going to be up, they're going to be north of some of these other guys. What's going on with Aiden Hutchinson's contract? Where was that at? I just see he was only making $1 million this year. 985 is a base salary. 5.7 million is a prorated bonus. 2.9 is a prorated bonus, probably to make the roster. Only 3.9 million in guaranteed money. So that's pretty low for the second overall pick in his third season. He made the bulk of his money his first two seasons. So that's a big break for the Lions this year, not having to pay him. Penei Sewell is only $1 million base salary. So I expect the Lions to extend Penei Sewell. I don't think that you cannot lose this guy. I would give him at least a 4, if not a 5-year deal. And there was some pretty big deals that were handed out. I don't remember who signed a new deal this year. We had Michael Owenu, who signed a $57 million extension with the Patriots. Jonah Williams signed a 2-year, $30 million with the Cardinals. Obviously, we know that Jonah Jackson's, totally fleeced his team, the Rams. Does anybody remember who got a big deal for an offensive tackle this year? I'm not remembering right now. But we know that it's more than likely going to be, 25 million a year, 5 years, 125 million. He'll probably get at least 50% of that guaranteed. Probably a $30 million signing bonus. I would imagine. It would only make sense. Even though the void year is really not going to help, because the way that this works, it doesn't really help. So if we've got 30 million on signing, we'll do 60 million guaranteed. Oh my God, why is this doing that? So 30 and 30 is 60. We'll give him an extra 5 guaranteed. Let's see. We'll make his base salary. I think his base salary is good where it is. So 30, 50, 75, 85, 90. $45, 75, 100, 45, 75, 95, 120. All right, so now our cap space just dropped another 7 million. So there you go. 3 guys are done. 3 of the biggest contracts you're going to have on this team is your tackle, your corner, a wide receiver. You still have $19.7 million in cap space. It can get done. I don't want to hear people say we can't pay Jared Goff and still pay our guys, because we absolutely could. We could, extend Taylor Decker, give him an extra season at 15 million or something like that. Roll in a couple of void years, reduce his cap hit by giving him a signing bonus, spreading it out over 3 seasons. It's just called roster roulette for a reason. That's what I called it. It's what I nicknamed it. I don't know what these GMs do and these financial gurus do. I mean, I understand a very small percentage of really how to do these contracts, for the long term. I mean, I understand a lot of it, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of ways to do this, a lot of ways that we don't, that I don't know. But we'll learn more, but I at least wanted to show you guys it can be done. It absolutely can be done. We don't have to worry about losing our guys. So that's it. That's all I wanted to share tonight. I appreciate all you guys for joining. Looks like we lost about 20 people doing the long-handed roster extensions, and that's okay. So question is that we're going to try to get answered this week. Are the Lions going to move up? Are they going to move up and draft the edge of the future? The question that I have for you guys for the next show is Aiden Hutchinson. Is he going to break the bank when it's time to sign a contract? Now, do me a favor. Remove your Saturdays from your Sundays. Go and look at his stats and compare him to the top 20 defensive ends in the league. And then compare him to the top 5 contracts in the league. Would you pay Aiden Hutchinson more than any of the top 5 contracts in the league at defensive end for what he produces? Again, it's hard to remove Saturday from Sunday, but you have to do it to be able to look at things, objectively and really try to filter out the noise and get down to the brass tacks, which is he worth it? Is he elite? Does he deserve elite money? I think that this year will tell us exactly who Aiden Hutchinson is. Is he going to finally break out and be a complete game changer now that he has a defensive line and what will be a defensive backfield that should be better than last year, and it should be better than his first year? So this is going to be the season that I think that Aiden Hutchinson proves to us whether he belongs in that top 20 conversation. He's not there yet. He's almost there. I think, a lot of people give him a lot of credit, and he deserves a lot of credit for what he's been able to produce. I just want to see a little bit more. But those are the bigger questions that I think that Brad Holmes is going to have to wrestle with in the coming seasons, because after this year, you can start talking about contract, extensions and negotiations in year 4. But there's also the franchise tag. And I would much rather pay somebody the franchise tag and extend, that opportunity for a new extension a little bit further down the road, and pay somebody a hefty ransom for 1 season than committing $150 million to a defensive end when you're more than likely going to draft one this year. And if he ends up being as good, if not better than Aiden Hutchinson, then what do you do? Do you draft another defensive end next year? I don't know. Those are the hard questions a GM has to answer. It's not for me to make that determination. I can only give you an opinion. And I could tell you right now, today, I wouldn't pay Aiden Hutchinson a top contract in this league today. But that doesn't mean at the end of this season, he's not going to show us he deserves all that and more. And I hope he does. I really do. I want him to completely change the focus in the game this year for the Detroit Lions. All right. Okay, guys. I will check you guys out later. We'll catch you guys in the next show. Looks like you guys are having some fun in the chat. I'll just remind everyone to be cordial. And Tracy, you know what to do if there's issues. All right, you guys. We'll see you next time.